And I am so excited I can't imagine a better first guest on this series that we're doing this year than the amazing and remarkable and talent-filled and personality-filled and spirit-filled Roosevelt Credit. Roosevelt, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, I'm so excited. What's up, everybody all over the place? Big shout out to OSU and Corvallis. And I see a lot of people I went to school with. This is so exciting. Yes, and thanks for all. I'm not really all of those things Steve talked about, but for everybody that knows me, it's just laughing, going, "Are you talking about Rue?" Yeah, well, so, you know, they all know me, Steve, so you can lay off all the BS. Okay, all right.
To know Rue is to love Rue. Hey, just one note to our guests. In my opinion, if you put the view on speaker view, I think that's going to give you the best experience today. We elected to do a non-webinar type event where all your faces can be here with us instead of just a couple. We think it makes it more personal and more community filled, and developing community is just a real focus for us during this time, which I'm sure you all agree with. Hey, Rue, let's get into it, shall we? You got some family members here, so be careful what you say right now. But what I want to know is I want to know about your childhood. What was your childhood like? What was music like as a child? What were you like as a kid? Were you a good kid? Were you what kind of kid were you? Where did your early love for music start to come out and those influences?
Wow. Okay, that's a loaded question. And for those of all of you who don't know, my mom is on this call. There was enough space, so she's here. She's out in California, so everybody just go like this. Say hi, Mama. That's Mama right there. Mama, Clyde Bell, that's you. Ah, yeah, there you go. So she's waving back. All right, so I grew up, like you said, in Oakland, California. Thank you for asking. And yeah, you know, my family is very musical. My mom comes from a family, she has 12 sisters and brothers. She actually had 13, one passed away at birth. And so my big mama, I called her, my grandmother, and we kind of traveled in a village. Can everybody hear us okay? All right. Okay, great. Thank you. So yeah, so there was singing all the time. We'd get up on Sunday mornings at like 5 in the morning when we were there summering at Big Mama's house, and they get up and they teach us how to pray. So everybody had to get in a big circle in the living room, which wasn't very big. But we would all be all sleepy and stuff, and we'd go around and we'd learn how to pray and we'd sing songs. So music has been in my life since I can possibly remember. So even though I grew up in California, I was still very close to that. My mom sang and she played a little piano, and my father also sang and played piano, both by ear. I'm the only one that actually took it on as a career. But even to this day, a lot of my mom's sisters and brothers, they play for their churches around in Texas, in those small churches on the side of the road. And most of them don't read music. They all read by ear. They all play by ear. And so that's how I started playing. So that's how I got started. And then Mom in California, she put me in the children's choir. I was in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, and I'm now an Eagle Scout. And I also was in the Oakland Children's Choir, the Oakland Youth Choir, and then I went on to graduate, to the Oakland Children's Choir, and then the adult choir. And so I've been in choirs all my life, and learned how to sing even when I was very young, and thankful for that. And then I had the opportunity to, I got to go to Oregon State because of engineering. I got an engineering scholarship. A lot of you knew that. And then I didn't, I was in the engineering school and I auditioned for the opera at Oregon State University. And my first year or second year, I guess it was. And then I got the lead in the opera. So I started singing. I sang The Marriage of Figaro. And so I had to be a music major at the time to take the lead in the opera. So I came out of the engineering school where I had my scholarship and sang the opera, and then I was going to go back to the engineering school. And they're like, Rue, why don't you come into the dean's office? You know, that was, oh my God, Eisman, I think it was, and Carlson, Dean Carlson. And he was there, and he's like, yeah, why don't you sit down and play the piano? And I was like, you have a Busendorfer in your office. So I sat down and I played the piano, and then they're like, wow. And then he's like, excuse me one moment. And then he started pulling some of these other people into his office there in Benton Hall. And he goes, hey, Rue, why don't you sight read? You know how to sight read? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, can you play that music that's on the piano? And I was like, you want me to play it or sing it? And he goes, play it. And this is me. Every good boy C does find G, B flat, and you could see the people in the office start going, from smiles, they start going like this, oh no, right? Because I played by ear, and they heard me sit down and play, and they're like, really? And then, like I just played for you now, and then they go, oh, but you don't read music for piano. And I was like, but let me sight read it for you. I can sing it. And they're like, well, do that. And so I sight read it, and I sang the parts, and they were like, oh, I get it. So you're a singer. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I got the lead in the opera. So they convinced me to stay in the School of Music, and that's where I stayed. So I ended up getting a music education degree. Shout out to all my colleagues there. I see you there. And I'm so glad that you're all still a part of the OSU family. That makes me so happy just to see you. I can't even say. So yeah, so I ended up getting a degree in music from Oregon State, and that's how I got there, strictly an accident.
So let me go back a little bit, Rue. Are you saying that your music experiences prior to Oregon State were primarily by ear? Like you played piano by ear and you sang by ear? Is that correct?
Well, you know, in church I did. I grew up in a big Baptist church. Mm-hmm. Sang by ear, so by rote. But because I was in the Oakland Children's Choir and the Oakland Youth Chorus, I learned how to sing when I was a child. So do, re, mi, fa, ti, do, and all of that.
Solfege, okay.
I learned all by solfege. Oh, I learned by both. I learned by intervallically and by solfege.
Well, you know, because one of the things that I think we face with musicians is that if they come in primarily as music readers, sometimes they don't do a great job at learning how to learn music by ear, right? I mean, they're locked into learning only, I gotta have notes. Right. And generally music schools don't find that, you know, such a huge problem. But the opposite also happens, is people have these tremendous by ear skills, but their kind of music reading, traditional music reading is very weak. And then it's hard for them to add that. Did you feel that you kind of had equal parts of both?
How dare you? Of course not. Yeah.
Well, was it tough then? Was it tough to develop the formal musicianship?
To this day, it's extremely tough for one to go from one to the other. The reason is because as somebody that used to play, that plays by ear, you are used to things sounding just beautiful from the get-go. You sit down and you just find the key and you just play it and it sounds right. You know, when you have to read it by music, you have to play the right notes and play what you see in front of you, and you have to listen to yourself make the mistakes until you learn how to play it the correct way. So that's what practice is all about. So it was very difficult as someone to play by ear to start playing by music. The only difference for me was because I was used to singing sight reading, so I could read the music. I just couldn't get it in my fingers, and that's
So at Oregon State, who was the person that was patient with you and helped you develop that? Because this other side has been key to your career, right?
It has been key to my career, and it took a lot. It was very hard, and the unfortunate person that got to teach me my first piano class, because I had to go all the way back to remedial piano, was Rebecca Jeffers. I'm so for Becky, and she got me in piano class, and she's like, okay, you're going to read the music. And I was like, yeah, okay. So what she would do is she would demonstrate, which is not a good thing to do for someone who plays by ear. So she'd demonstrate what she wanted us to hear while she was reading the music, but she knew the music, of course. And then we were supposed to read it and play it like she played it. So I didn't have to read it. So for a long time, I could fake it because she would play the piano, and then I would play it exactly like she played it because I played by ear.
Okay, now that's awesome. So how long did it take Becky Jeffers to figure out you were cheating?
It's not cheating. They never said. All right. So
how long did it take her to figure it out?
it took her probably a few days because, I mean,
Okay.
about a week maybe, because I only had piano. I think I didn't have it every day. I think it was twice a week or something. I can't remember. But it took her a couple of weeks. And then she would come over and she'd sit behind me and she goes, "Oh, I get it." And so she'd take the music and she'd put the music in front of me and tell me to play it first. And I would be like, "Oh, no." So I would have to play it, but I'd go back to the ding, ding, very slow, and she'd go, see? And then she moved my piano from being next to her to across the room. So the pianos were back to back all the way down. He had keyboards on both sides. She moved me to the back of the other side so I couldn't watch her hands. And that was how I learned how to play from my sister, because my sister got piano lessons. But I would play Johnny and all of those etudes because I would watch her hands and then sit down and play what she played. Not necessarily the correct fingering, but I could play it. So Becky found that out quick, and so they made me learn how to play by notes, and it was a very painful experience. And then she told my next piano teacher was Judy Kruger, and she also told Judy what I was doing in piano class. So Judy also knew, so Judy would never play for me, and she'd put the music in front of me and make me play it first. And then, so everybody knew to put the music in front of me first and not to play it for me. So it became very difficult, but I'm thankful for the process.
I had one student do an audition once, and I said, "Do you sight read?" And they were like, "Yeah, I love to sight read." And so I gave them something, and they were like, "Can you sing it first for me? I'm better at sight reading if I hear it first." And I was like, "Yep, I'm better too at sight reading if I hear it first." I completely agree. So this happens all the time, and I also think it gets at the distinction that we make between singing or playing by ear and singing and playing by sight. It's less of a dichotomy, because putting things in our ear and then singing by ear, right? We always sing by ear once we know it.
Right.
And so I think that the distinction is a little less dramatic. Let's change the topic just a little bit. When were you? What were the years that you were at Oregon State? What do you remember?
Woo! You're asking my age in an indirect way. Well,
Yeah, I am.
I graduated from high school in 1984.
84. Okay.
And I was at OSU from 84 to 90. And the reason I was there so long is because I was in the engineering school for 2 years, and I had all of these science credits because I took.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I loved it because I wanted to make synthesizers. Is what I wanted to do, was make things that made music and made sound. And I loved that. So, and then when I got into the school, when I transferred schools, I had to start again because I didn't have any languages. So I had to go back to remedial piano, and I had to start taking German, or I had to, because they didn't offer, it was either German, French, and they didn't have Italian when I was there. So I had to learn German. So I had to go back to those beginning classes, and they didn't teach those classes in the summer. So I had to stay extra years to get my degree. But, the music faculty was very kind, and the School of Education and Dr. Knapp was like amazing, and he made our music education classes so much fun, and they made my experience at OSU, even though it was difficult, so much fun, other than those Benton bugs, which I found out when I went back to get my award from Oregon State, that those bugs still exist in the music department. I can't believe.
Oh yeah, no, it's part of our life. So you were in Corvallis in the 1980s, and So I would be interested to know what was it like to be a young African American from out of state in Corvallis, Oregon, in the 1980s. Were those good experiences? Was it tough? Did you feel did you feel like you fit in, or what was your experiences with that?
Wow, thanks for asking, Steve. And this is one of of the things that people, I've been doing since since the pandemic and things and the racial tension that's been happening in the United States right now, people have always been asking. So I'm giving you guys all permission, if you don't know, just to ask your friends and ask people whether they want to be, some people want to be African American, some people want to be referred to as black people. It just depends. And so, so you just politely ask, you just like, people like to be called different things. How would you like me to, just like your pronouns or he, her, him, she, whatever. So people don't get offended if you ask them, right? So I go by black. I'm a black guy. I'm a black man because I grew up in the United States, and I love Africa, and I love my tradition, and my family is part French and part Indian. So we have a lot of mixed up in ours too, and so that's just how I identify myself. Yeah, so I in the 80s, when I got to Oregon State, my friends and my church and my family was all praying for me because they're like, got this scholarship to go to Oregon. What are you doing? Oregon, really? And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go and study engineering. I'm so excited. And it came out in the newspaper that I got this scholarship, and everyone was so excited. You're going to go study and be where Hewlett Packard is? That's huge. And I'm like, yeah, I know how huge it was. And I was very grateful. I got to Oregon State, and I walk into my freshman dorm, and I was in the overflow dorm at Holly. First of all, I took the bus to Oregon with all my luggage, because California to Oregon, I picked Oregon. I was like, I got the scholarship, which was great, but it was also close enough so I could go home on the weekends if I didn't like it. So I took the bus, the Greyhound bus, to Oregon State. It let me off at the Greyhound station, and I took a cab to what I thought was the address I knew, which was the administration building at Oregon State, right inside the big gate. And I went to the president's office, and I was like, I'm here to check in. And they're like, you're a freshman, aren't you? Yeah. You're like, well, you need to go to Holly Hall. For those of you who know OSU, it's at the other end of campus, like all the way. Okay. So by the time I get to Oregon State, over at Holly Hall, where I was supposed to check in, I was completely sweated out and pitted out. I felt horrible. Everybody was staring at me because I had all my luggage, and I was trying to figure out where the dorm was. So I got there, and I was like, I'm going to check in. I checked in. Okay. And then I get in the elevator, and then the people in the elevator started clutching their purses. Now, I'm used to seeing that because I grew up with my face. So, and my mom is very well schooled about make sure you keep your hands on the steering wheel so they can see you. Make sure you have your driver's license out, because as what you look like, people are going to be after you, and you need to just. So they schooled me with that early. And I got that from Boy Scouts, I got that from church, and I got that from my family. Okay, so I get into the elevator, and they're like, everyone's quiet, and so this is me. Hi, how you doing? And they're looking at me like, so did you get a football scholarship? And I'm like, football scholarship? They're like, oh, are you one of the athletes? And I'm like, actually, no, I'm here to study engineering. And then that was the end of that conversation. I went to my room. I opened up my room. On the other bunk was a two gunny sacks, a rifle, a gun, cowboy boots, a Playboy magazine, and a cowboy hat. And so I closed the door. Now, I'm already sweaty. I go back downstairs. I'm like, you know what? I have the wrong room. And my parents are already praying that I didn't disappear in the middle of the night because of what I look like going to Oregon. Okay, so they're like, stupid freshman, that's your room. That's your roommate. Go back up. I went back up there. I opened the door, and there was this guy sitting on his bunk, on his other bed, with his jeans on and his shirt off, and he was sharpening this long knife. And I was like, well, welcome to Oregon. So I was like, hi, I guess I'm your roommate. And he's like, and everybody, you all are laughing because you guys that know me and went to school are like, oh yeah, we know who he's talking about. So I won't put him under the bus all the way. But I just, so I won't tell you his name, but he's like, well, you're a what are you doing in this room? And he said the N-word. He goes, nigger, you're in the wrong room. And I was like, well, they told me that this was my room and I'm supposed to be here. Okay, freshman, okay? And I'm already scared out of my wits because the church had sent me off in prayer. So I went in, and he goes, so I went back down. I was like, the guy said it's not, they're like, that's your roommate. Go on upstairs. So I went back up there, and I told him I was roommate. Okay, so fast forward. We got to know each other. We became great friends, and he'd see me come out of the shower, and he's like, I put lotion on my skin, for instance, and the lotion is white. When you put it on a black face, it's white. And he goes, why does it look like that on you? Or you got some kind of, I was like, well, on my skin, lotion looks white, and I have to moisturize. So we had to go all the way back and learn each other's customs and stuff. It was great. Fast forward, he was a wonderful guy. We got along, and there you have it. So that was my introduction to Oregon State. Later on that year, there was a cross burning on the black house where the black people would hang out. There was a cross burning, and I was like, I told my mom that. Mom's like, get on the plane and get on the bus and come home. So I went home for the weekend, and then decided we weren't going to go back. But then I got a call, and I was like, I'm not coming back. And they're like, oh no, you're coming back. Come on, it's going to be okay. And so I went back, and thanks to Donna Kime and Will Kime in the Residence Hall Association, and at the time it was President Byrne who was just so gracious to me, and then my Dean of Engineering. So I went back to school and I ended up staying there, and it ended up being just fine. It wanted to change my life forever. I decided then that I wanted to be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Henceforth, when I was doing my student teaching at Corvallis High School and the elementary schools there, and the kids would look at me and they'd scream, ah! Okay, so this is how class would start. And then I was like, oh my God. And the teachers and all were looking at it going, this isn't going to go well. So I would always have like the principal, the vice principal, the teachers, they'd all be in my classroom trying to figure out what's going to happen, what he's going to do. And I'm like, come and follow me in a line. And I'd get the kids to sit in a circle. And then eventually they started to get to know me after I started laughing with them. And then they wanted to hold my hand. So they were holding my hand in class, and then they'd touch me, and then they'd look at their hands and they'd go, and I was like, no, it doesn't come off. Now this is just because they just didn't know. They didn't have a chance to hold hands with a black person, African American, and it has nothing to do with them or their raising. It was just in Corvallis, there wasn't a lot of us. Or the football players were not teaching them in classroom, whatever. So I started with the kids, and I got them to know me, and then they wanted to introduce me to their parents, and the principals are like, wow, you handled that well. And then Dr. Eisman would like, Gil Knapp would be like, yeah, I got a phone call from the principal today about you, and he said that you handled yourself well, so tell the whole class about it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So fast forward, I had a lot of education from Oregon State, and I'm glad to be there. But it wasn't an easy journey, but it was worth the trip because it's made me who I am today.
Man, I appreciate those stories. Thank you, Ru. And I think, Corvallis is such a wonderful, wonderful place. Yes. But I think that Oregon in general, Corvallis in specific, and other places in Oregon, we're still, in our journey of really developing a community that is open and equitable. And I've been thankful for the years of President Ray, who I think, I know he worked so hard on this issue. And I'm excited about what can be done with our next president.
Amen.
So,
yeah.
How did you get to New York? I mean, as far as I know, there is no direct route from Corvallis, Oregon to New York City. So how did you get there?
Strictly by accident. The reason I got to Oregon State is because Mom said we were in the same area code and it was okay. When I went to Chicago for for graduate school, I was in a different time zone, and Mom's like, no, that's not okay. But I went there because I studied with Bruce Hall, one of the famous baritones, and I'm thankful I went there. And then when I was there after grad school, during grad school, I auditioned for I got this call from an agent to come and audition, and I went to audition, and the audition that I got was Phantom of the Opera. And I didn't do my homework because I wasn't a Broadway person, right? So I could care less about the Tonys and all that. And I was like, ooh, Phantom of the Opera, yeah, I want to sing this. They flew me out to New York, me and my roommate, and I went to the theater and I sang an aria, Non Piangerai, from the Marriage of Figaro. And they're like, well, that's nice, in front of Andrew Lloyd Webber and Hal Prince and all of their staff. And they're like looking at me going, whoa! I was like, yeah, Phantom of the Opera. And they're like, can you sing for us the stuff we sent you? And it was, please, monsieur, don't look at me. And it was this weird thing that Bouquet sings in the show. And I sang it all nice in my format. And they're like, can you not sing it so loud and not like that? Can you just sing it like a regular person, not so classical? And I'm looking at them going, you're asking me to audition for Phantom of the Opera and sing not classical. I didn't get it. So by the end of the audition, I was, please, miss you, don't look at you. And they're like, yeah, yeah. And I was so pissed off, and I'm like, I'm not doing this. I already knew that I wasn't going to take the job, whatever it was, because they had made me mad. And because I had been studying all these languages, and it was an opera, and they wanted me to basically to speak off my voice, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. Okay, so Hal was very kind. He goes, I realize that this is your first time. Do you know what Phantom of the Opera is? He explained it to me. He says a Broadway musical, and I go, oh, it's a Broadway musical? What is, oh, okay. So then it made more sense to me. I sang another song in English, and then they're like, you know what? You're not right for Phantom of the Opera, but stay tuned. I have something for you. I was like, great. I went home. I was like, I'm not going back, because I didn't want to be on Broadway. And then I got a call a year later, and it was Hal Prince's office, and they said, we'd like to offer you a job in Showboat on Broadway. And I was like, thanks, but no thanks. I've already been to New York, Phantom of the Opera, didn't want to do that. I don't want to do musical theater. To Hal Prince office. And then they were like, well, let's try this again. This is an opportunity of a lifetime. And I'm like, I don't care. It's not Phantom. It's not anything I want to sing. I want to sing Figaro. I want to sing Don Giovanni. And they're like, you still don't get it. You're so green. So they call Bruce Hall, my teacher, and they're like, talk to him. And he's like, well, Roosevelt, you need to. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. They called the dean, and I said no to the dean. And they're like, you know who you need to call? Call his mother. So they called my mom in California and said, can you talk to your son? Fast forward, mom calls me and goes, I got a call from Hal Prince in New York or something, and they said they all think you need to take this job. So take the job. I told them you would say yes, and you think about it. I love you, and she hangs up the phone. I'm like, no! Okay, so I took the job. I moved to New York, and that's how I got there. And then when we had first rehearsal, they started singing Old Man River. I started to cry, and I decided then that I was like, okay, this is beautiful, because Showboat, King and I, and South Pacific are the three first musicals, American musicals, that bridge opera operetta together. Showboat as being the crown jewel in that crown, and it also deals with blacks and whites on the stage at the same time. So I got such an education out of that show, having a chance to work with Hal Prince and Elaine Stritch and all the likes. And then we got the Tony. We got a bunch of Tonys. My life changed forever. That's how I got to New York. It was strictly by mistake.
That is amazing. So, do you have any advice for what is the life of a New York performing artist? What is it like to? So you take nothing but limousines everywhere, and you probably have a valet, I assume.
Yeah.
Your personal chef, the exercise person. What do they call that?
Trainer. Thank you.
There you go. I don't even know what they're called. So what is the life of a New York City performing artist?
Well, can I just tell everybody there that's out there listening that they sent me a bunch of questions that we could ask from, and none of these questions are anything like the ones they sent me. Just so
they're a little bit.
So Steve is just, because I've known Steve so long, he's like, I know Rue, and I'm just going to talk to Rue. And Terry's like, just talk to him. And I'm like, okay, so here we go. So this is unscripted, but thank you. Okay, so when I first moved to New York and I got my first Broadway show and my first entrance, my first opening night, Mom was my date. I flew her out here. And yes, I was living the dream. It was unbelievable. I took Mom to Macy's because I didn't know Bertolf Goodman. I took Mom to Macy's. We went up to the real fancy floor, and we bought her outfit from head to toe, shoes, and the whole deal. And Mom's like, still not believing that I got to New York, still not understanding quite what this all is, because we didn't do Broadway. And I was like, Mom, it's going to change your life too. Like you sold me Under the Bridge, I'm going to make you like it. And so she went, and then she hopped, and I got her a limousine. Because I had to go early. So the limousine picked her up at the house and brought her to the stage door. She hopped out of the stage door. I told her never to don't touch the door handles. They do that all for you. They open the door. She gets out. She gets out of the limo and catches the hem of her gown in her high heel shoe and rips it. Zip! So that was right off the bat. So she's coming into the stage door and she's already sad. I'm like, what's wrong? I ripped my outfit. So she now comes up to my dressing room, and my dressers take her clothes off, take her clothes away. She puts on my robe, right before the entrance, like the 10 minutes before places, they put her back in her clothes. You could not even tell that the outfit had been ripped. Steamed her, and they walked her to her seat, and she watched the show. So that was my opening night. And she got the limousine ride, and we had a time of life. Her life has never been the same, and she believed in Broadway from there on out. So I tell my students, and I tell everybody listening, that the most importantly, find what you love to do and follow your dreams. I mean, we all have been told, I wanted to be an engineer. My uncles are engineers, and that's a rare thing in itself. And I wanted to do that as well. And I also knew that engineers made a lot of money, and I knew Hewlett Packard, and I wanted to set up myself so I could take care of my family too. So, and things changed. I ended up becoming a music education major, and but that was my passion. And follow your passion. You know what you want. You can do several things. I couldn't do several things. They told me I could not have 2-degree programs at Oregon State when I was there, so I had to decide, which was all changed now. But back then it was a lot different for me, I guess. So I got the degree that I should have had in the first place. I'm living the life I should have had, and that's because we took a risk on it. So take a risk, and if you're going to go into our business, thank you everybody out there. We need those piano lessons. Dance lessons are good. Get them in church choirs, do community choirs, all of it. Just get people singing. As a child, you don't necessarily need to be taking voice lessons right off the bat, but just developing your skills and your sight reading abilities and your passion for how to pull a phrase, which is how to create a phrase, how to make an art, dealing with text, all of it's so important, and you can learn that from a child on up, and learn how to read. Because I was always pulled out during reading because I was a slow reader, and they would end up sending me to counseling for some odd reason. So I've always been a slow reader, so I hate cold reads and I also learned how to read at church, reading the King James Version of the Bible, and the words were so big that I couldn't even sound them out. Ebenezer, and I was just like, and then the whole church would help you out. And so I got enough of that, so that became a little bit of an emotional ride for me. So I don't like to read in public, but I do now because that's part of my business. So just learn how to just be your best self and follow your heart and your passion. Is what I suggest. Yeah.
One of my favorite projects, you and I have done several things to do together, and one of our favorite projects is when we brought all 3 of our top choirs to New York City, and we performed at Lincoln Center at A.V. Fisher.
Yeah.
And you were our guest artist, and we sang a set. I want you to talk a little bit about your work, but would it be all right if I played just a quick little clip from that?
Oh, yeah, I can't wait. What'd you get?
I think this is Over My Head. Let's listen to a little clip of Over My Head. So I love that performance, and the people don't get to hear all the applause that happened. The applause was just enormous. But one of the things that was exciting about this was this idea of singing by ear, improvisation. And so when you came to Oregon State, you worked with the chamber choir on this a little bit, and of course we worked on it in New York with you. But in all of the performances with you, a sense of improvisation with the choir is like really, really key. We're using a music score to learn our notes, but you heard a little bit of it there. If we play the other clip, I think there's even a little bit more on that. But talk about how you have combined in your teaching this desire to teach improvisation, singing by ear, along with, of course, the usual musical concepts.
Wow, thank you for asking. Because I grew up that way, I find out it's very important. I think that you need to you should start singing and finding out what that inner passion is as soon as possible. And kids come out singing, and then they're told that they can't sing or that they can't match pitch or that they can't do something. And this is where they learn. And just like they say, you can't love right away. You can't. There's so many can'ts, and I take the can't out of your vocabulary and find a way that's possible, especially for a child. So, I tell my students all the time, all the choir, all the way up to your 100. I was like, just do what you love. I find it and find a passion and do that. And my passion has always been church because I grew up Baptist. And so I have people always, I used to get the side eye that I used to, like, oh, you're singing out of the hymnal, which is why I published my first book, because my anthology of music, because I wanted people to know that the music was important, and it didn't have to be played in 4-part harmony so that the choirs could read it. It could be done in solo version. So I come out with solo versions of spirituals and things, which is why that's so important to me. And I think that we should cultivate both of those minds, because they're both skills are equally important. When we're sitting around at Hanukkah, or when we're sitting around at Christmas, or if you're singing Happy Birthday and you want to sing a harmony part, if you've learned how to do that from all of your life experience in the pew at church or wherever you are with your crazy choir director saying, just pick something, keep it in the chord. But even nowadays, the 7 and the 11 and all of these fancy chords, it's all about balancing the chords. Steve, and you know this more than any, because Oregon State has one of the best choirs, and the way he gets the tone, and you can have every chord on the piano being played, and you can hear them all if you know how to balance the chord when a choir sings and get the vowels right. So it's so important to do all of that work. So that's what I tell people, and I think that sight reading class needs to incorporate the ability to take dictation, which is really great, which is your ear training. And I think that sitting around and you say, okay, everybody sing Happy Birthday and come up with their own version, just do it, boom, and it should be beautiful right off the bat. Or Chris, Jingle Bells, boom. And people, I don't want to sing. I was like, no, there's no I don't want to. You're going to jump in and you're going to sing Jingle Bells and make up your own part and make it beautiful. Go. So that's important, and I stick by it.
That's great. That's fantastic. So another thing that I thought was really exciting was when you went on, first of all, I think making the Porgy cast was very important to you. But then you also made the traveling cast. And you might want to talk about either, but for me, the traveling cast was exciting because Nikki and I traveled up to Seattle and saw you perform in Seattle, and that was just really eye-opening for me to see you on stage in that. What did it mean for you to make that Porgy cast? Either one of them, the award-winning one in New York or the traveling one, and what was it like traveling around the country, performing every night, practically in a different place? I mean, I think you'd probably do a couple performances in a location, then go to the next.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yes, on Broadway we do 8 shows a week. We usually have, usually dark on one night. For most of the shows here in New York, it's on a Monday. We also have pickup rehearsals, so we rehearse during the week, and then their understudies rehearsal are also during the day during the week. So it depends on what your job is, how many rehearsals you have before the show. Being in a Broadway show, I'm lucky to have had 2 experiences, to have been on the Tony Awards twice and to be in 2 major historic Broadway shows. And I can't even say anything except I'm thankful that God has, giving thanks to God, of course, and thanks for people taking a risk in me. And so because there's a lot of talent out there, and a lot of it has to be with you have to be at the right time, at the right place. You have to have the right look for that show. It doesn't mean that you have the wrong look, but for that specific show, I had the right look for that show, or they decided after hearing me and seeing me that they wanted my look and what I do as a character. So there's so many things that go into it. So I have to tell people it's never anything personal. And, I used to get really sad. It took me 10 years between the 2 shows. And what did I do between those 10 years? Were a lot of concerts. I came out and sang at OSU. I did all this other stuff because you have to do many things to keep your career going, including I'm a professional singer at a church, which I do every Sunday. Even now in COVID, we are virtual, and I'm thankful for that. We've learned. So now I stand at home and I have lights in my house and I videotape myself singing my own part. They put it together and it comes out glorious when they finish with it. So there's many different things. Yeah, so that tour was life-changing, and I loved it. Being 8 shows a week, and then you'd get on an airplane and go someplace else. And it was always, where do you get your haircut? Where do you get your food? You have to get into a new theater. Call your friends in that area. I tried to call them and make sure that they knew I was close, and they'd all come, and I'd have Roosevelt Credit, more stage door people. They're like, Rue, it's because of you. The show is like being successful. Half the audience is yours. And I just loved it that my friends, thank you everyone, all of you included, for supporting the arts. The local symphonies, the OSU, the plays in the park, the local churches, all of it. Thank you for your support, and thank you for supporting this organization, because this is how people like me get where we are, because of things like you and people like you. So thank you. I think it's so important. The whole thing about being in a new place is just going for it. You just jump and you run and you roll and you just enjoy the experience. And it was that fast. And I had a great time in every city. Every city brought its own things and its own difficulties and its own successes. And you just embrace them all. So I've got to see the country because of being on tour and a tour like that. And you were with the same people every place, so we all had the same problems, so we all could experience them together, which made it a lot easier, when we were in these high rises, thinking that we weren't, nobody liked us. We'd go find our other people, and we go, let's go walk around the street at night and find a bodega. They're like, what's a bodega? 7-Eleven. Okay, 7-Eleven.
7-Eleven. Nice.
You just never know. And even when I did, a lot of you may know, I was in what was the name of that opera where we got, not the opera, it was the movie, the name of the
it won a Grammy.
A Grammy, and I was sitting in my room. I know.
The Slave Ship. Someone help us out there. Someone type it in there.
I don't have my resume, and I've forgotten. Anyway.
12 years a slave.
12 years a slave. Who said that? I love you. Thank you. Right. So I was in my house. Thank you, Gail. Mwah! And that's another famous singing person there. You guys all know Gail. She's your local. But she did my concert when I was there, and I'm always thankful. She does a mean Bess. You guys know that. When you hear her sing Porgy and Bess, and she could throw a mean jazz down too. Anyway, so I was in my hotel room in Philadelphia, and we won the Oscar for 12 Years a Slave, and I went out in the hallway, and I was so excited. But you can't yell in a hotel, and there was nobody for me to tell because all my friends were already asleep, and I was just sitting in my room going, oh, I guess we won an Oscar, yay! So it's just but whatever, you just never know in your life, and you just roll with the punches. And I was very thankful for the opportunity, just like being on the Tonys. When we did the Tonys, most of our time on the Tonys was spent on a bus, because they bus you all in. The buses all line up in New York. You get off the bus, you go through the private thing, your stars are on one side, and they take them into a room, and they come out in their costume, and the cast is on the other side. You go out, you meet, and you're like, hey, how you doing? Gotta go. You go onto the stage, you do your thing, you come off, the cast goes out the door, back down the hallway, through the alley, and back to the bus. And the stars that are nominated go back to the dressing rooms, because they have to put them back in their gowns and stuff and sit them back in their seats. Then we're stuck in traffic. So now we have performed on the Tonys, and now we're stuck in traffic trying to watch the Tonys on the bus, because the buses have a TV in them, and except the Wi-Fi is horrible. Okay, so then we were trying to watch the Tonys. We get back into the theater to take off our clothes in time for our category. We all just run to the television, and we find out that our cast won the Tonys. So it's not very glamorous. What's glamorous? Rehearsal. We're looking out in the rehearsal, and we see all of the nameplates with all of the pictures of where everybody's sitting. That's where Bernadette Peters. Oh my gosh, Whoopi's going to sit there. So that's where we had the most fun. But it's not very glamorous when you're performing, but it's worth it.
That makes perfect sense when you think about the traffic that the Tonys would have. That's it. But I don't think any of us could imagine that what happens is they use buses as temporary green rooms, essentially. They're not dressing rooms.
That's right. And we get dressed at our theaters because there's too many of us, all those Broadway casts. And so everybody's, with their nice buses, they don't send the school bus. We get them both, but usually we get the big deluxe bus, the 55-seater. And everyone in New York knows this is happening, so they all sit outside on the streets, and as they see the buses come by, because the name placards with the little, somebody's put magic marker and put your cast in there so you can see which bus is yours. And so when the bus is driving down, everybody in New York is screaming, "Yay, good luck, good luck!" And because so that's how we get our love, is because they watch the buses go by and they don't even see the Tonys until after. And that was, and now they can go back and YouTube it. But it's pretty amazing. It's something that you would never expect, but it's something that only somebody that has done it would understand. And I'm glad I get to share it with you. I hope it's interesting, because it's pretty fun.
We have a question from Cameron McDonald. Cameron is a senior voice performance major at Oregon State University, and he's waving right there. He asks, what is the first step that you take when you build a character? Stage character.
Wow, there's so many ways of doing it, depending on your method of study. Stanislavski, there's many different acting methods. But Rue, I had the opportunity of being in, with Susan Strollman, who is one of the best choreographers in the world, and I was in a room with Hal Prince. And they get us in a room, and you have to, first of all, we don't have a lot of time, so to build a character, you have to come up with three different tics that your character has, whether it's scratching, whether you flap your flies, whether you have a shake, whether you have a limp. You come up with whether you have an accent. You come up with three things to build your character right off the back. You need to know who you are, where you're from, what you want to do 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. You have to know your family lineage, and none of this exists. You have to come up with this in like a 10-minute period. And then you have to know what one thing is it that you bring to your community. What do you want them to have to remember you for? So there are ways of building a character quickly, and you put all of those things together. But first and foremost, I think, is just you have to breathe in and breathe out, and give yourself mental capacity and heart to understand what the characters are about, like Phantom of the Opera. Know what it is you're auditioning for. That's always not an opera, but a musical theater, totally different. And then start creating your character from there. I had Porgy and Bess was great, because Porgy and Bess usually has a cast of 75, and we took our cast down to, I think it was 32 of us in that cast. It was very small, and so everybody stood out, and so we had to come up who we were. So I knew the opera already, so I wanted to be Jim, and I was hoping that Jim would get some speaking lines in the musical theater piece, which didn't happen because they all mixed all the parts up anyway, but it was a great journey. So yes, do that work ahead of time. Give yourself a reason to be on that stage, something that you bring to your community, something that your community brings to you, and then you just go from there. Your favorite color.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hey, one final question, Rue, and this has to do with what it's like being in New York now during the pandemic, and not both for you as an individual, as an artist, and for the community. I mean, what you have here on Zoom today are people who love the arts and are well aware of the cultural institutions of New York, right? Broadway, and on, the Lincoln Center and Carnegie Hall and the Metropolitan Opera and the New York Philharmonic, and all of those institutions, all of these institutions are suffering, of course, right now. And so what is it like being a performing artist right now in New York City? And give us some words of hope that our treasured institutions are going to survive this.
Wow, thanks. Okay, when it first started back in February, we got the first call in March. I forget when it is now. And then all of a sudden, my book being, and I'm a professional performing artist, so I do a lot of traveling. So I went from having gigs and airplane tickets and auditions to absolutely nothing. I mean, my people would call and like, we're shutting down. The Philharmonic in New York shut down. The Met shut down. And I was like looking at the contract slowly disappear. And then I had all these black ink spits in my book. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? So, and it's frantic and it's chaos. And now you're by yourself because they say you can't go outside. Something's going to get you, COVID. And I was like, oh my gosh. So all of this put together was very, very difficult because I went from having an income to nothing. I didn't have a voice studio. I wasn't on a faculty. I'm not on a faculty. So I didn't have anything like that. I pay my own health insurance, and I do all of that, and it's really difficult. You don't do that when you're on Broadway, but I wasn't on Broadway when this started, so I didn't have a contract, so I didn't have anything. So I had to figure out what I was going to do. So the first couple of months, it was very sad, and I had to figure out, I had to, of course, get over the fact that I didn't have a single job. And when we first started, my choir director's like, I know you like to sing in churches, and we're closing down our church, but you can go sing for other churches. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to come to Oregon, and I'm going to go here. And then I kept going. And then I realized, oh yeah, there's no flying because you can't leave New York because there's no music across the country. There's no conductor that wants you, and then you're like, oh my gosh. So you had nothing. So what did Rue do? After prayer, lots of prayer, and of course my mom talking me through it and all that, and my friends. I have some very sweet angels in my life who have actually, some of my really close friends from school at Oregon State, like even sent me some checks. They're like, we know you don't have any money because you don't have any jobs. And we know how that works. We're just going to, I have a check that I don't need because I have my own business. So people would even send me checks, and that was very, very kind. So thank you, all of you those of you on here that have done that. I appreciate you. And thanks for the homemade cookies and all of that stuff. All right. So I started winning to my community. Clap because we care. So Rue puts on his mask, and I go outside. I start clapping for our health workers, and all of a sudden we unify all of our community up here. Every day they knew I was going to be outside. It was the only way I could see my neighbors, my little kids, little ones, my next door neighbors. They knew that they could all clap outside. I would be outside with a tambourine and my gloves and my mitt and my muff, and I would be yelling, and they could see some kind of human interaction for 3 minutes. So we would start that, and I did that 172 days until we got to level 3, where New York could get haircuts. And so on Father's Day, we stopped it. And I was like, okay, we're going to have a parade. If you want, come social distance, put your mask on, everybody come outside. I put it up on our community board. A lot of people came outside. We had we did our big dance and our clap for our healthcare workers outside. And then we had a little party outside with dancing and stuff. Socially distanced, of course, just so the kids could, and they're like, hey, that's Superman. They would call me Superman. It was just the cutest thing. But more importantly, it was a chance to keep our community together. During the process, I learned how to self-tape. I learned how to use my recorder on my phone. I had to get some better lights because my lights in my house, I would look like, all you could see was my teeth and my eyes. And like, okay, that's horrible. So I got more lights and the lamp off my piano, and so I had them stand on boxes and music stands, and I had a makeshift studio here in my house. So that's how I got through that. And then you just have to, it's a learning curve. Nobody saw this coming. There's no reason to wear a tuxedo, so I didn't. And there's no reason for me to even have this on because I don't really go out. But I love you, so there you go. So yeah, it just took a while. Everything is new. Washing your hands, all of the cleanliness. We do that anyway as artists. We drink lots of water. We keep ourselves clean. Blah blah blah. But but the mask wearing and all of that's all new. So I had to maneuver all of that, and it just took a while. But we got there. I could tell you many different stories, but most importantly, the mask thing I think is important, and I think it really does save us. And I relied a lot on the help of my friends, and I learned how to do things quickly virtually, so I could at least start singing some way. So I now sing a lot. I record and send myself in to different churches and blah blah blah, because everybody's tried to figure that out, and that's how I do it. And Zoom, I do a lot of public speaking on on how to get through the racial issues right now because the world is so hot. And how to help people through that, especially my friends in Oregon. I did a bunch of podcasts in Oregon. Shout out to Mary Bangle and to Professor Douglas from the music department who has passed on there. But we all are just out there trying to do education and try to make people feel better about where they are right now with what they have.
That's awesome, Rue. Thank you. Hey, I thought I'd play one more clip from our performance at Avery Fisher. Uh-oh. And this is like the last minute and a half of All My Sins. And I'd spoken earlier about the improvisation, and you're going to hear complete improvisation here. I have so many wonderful memories of this performance. Here we go. All my sins, all my sins, take it away.
Oh my gosh, I can't. Shout out to your wonderful wife Nicole, by the way, who was beautiful. You know, who coached.
Yeah, I think she's on. I think she's on the Zoom here. So
Carolyn,
I think she saw her back as well. She was like, "Oh, there I am."
has a great haircut, doesn't she? All right, yes. Can I just tell you, the first time we did that in rehearsal, and the students were like, I was like, now put the music down, and we're just going to do it. And they're like looking at me, going, like we always do. I go, put the music down. What do you mean? And then they put it down, and now all of these faces are looking at my face, and I'm like, we're just going to go to church. And everyone looks at each other, and they're like, what the heck? And Steve is just busting the gut. He's like, because he's Southern, he knows. He's like, oh, you all are in for a ride. And then by the end of it, they're just like, let's do it again. Oh my gosh, I got it this time. I know what you mean. This means back to the top. This means do it again. This means stop. We get softer. They're like, you do everything like you would do in like a classical situation, except that it's in gospel. I was like, come on, bring it on. So anyway, I'm still friends with a lot of the students, and thanks for taking the risk. Thanks for doing that arrangement. That arrangement is mine. That's published, and I appreciate you guys, Steve, for doing that. And supporting conductor. I'm a conductor. I'm a singer. I do all this many different things, which is how I managed to get here with Steve today. But most importantly, we're pretty nice guys, and we like pizza, and and maybe a good libation. Mom, you didn't hear that. And yeah, so
we have the same birthday.
We have the same birthday. There's a lot,
Rue, I was born in '65. Is that the year you were born?
66, but nobody cares.
Right. Okay, so we're a year apart. We're brothers of another mother. That much is totally true.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Rue. Thank you to all. We'll see you next time.